Welcome. Let's pretend economics is a story. Not the dry textbook kind, the kind you can tell at a dinner party. You know, the one that explains why rice gets expensive when everyone's suddenly craving rice? Why your boss talks about efficiency but also wants you to do unpaid overtime? And why governments sometimes print money like confetti and then act surprised? This video is a guided tour, a map, a cheat sheet. We'll look at the main theories people use to explain how markets work. We'll compare them. We'll fight them. Politely. We'll laugh a little. Quick promise. By the end, you'll have a mental toolbox. You'll also get the main characters: Adam Smith, Karl Marx, John Maynard Keynes, Milton Friedman. We're keeping it simple. Real simple. If you like simple explanations with a hint of sarcasm, you're in the right place. Let's begin. Think of classical economics as the original mechanical explanation of society. It imagines the economy as a big, precise machine. Gears, cogs, predictable movements. Turn one gear, another moves. No need to stand over it all day. Main idea: people acting in their self-interest produce social order. Adam Smith wrote about this in the 18th century. He used a memorable phrase, the invisible hand. That invisible hand nudges people to do things that, sometimes unexpectedly, benefit others. Here's the famous image: a butcher, a brewer, a baker. Each person pursues their own gain, yet the city gets fed. How? Markets coordinate. Prices are the signals. Let's use rice. With nice, simple, everyone likes rice. When demand for rice rises, price goes up. Farmers plant more. Supply goes up. Price falls back. Market finds balance. Classical critics would say the government should mostly step back. Interference distorts the machine. Tariffs, price controls, heavy regulations, they break the signals prices send. Classical economics focuses on long-run growth: capital, labor, technology. If you save and invest, the economy accumulates capital. More machines, more productivity, more wealth. But nothing is perfect. The classical model has blind spots. First, it assumes markets are frictionless. Real life not true. Second, efficiency is not the same as fairness. Third, unrealistic actors. The model treats people as rational machines. Classical economics still gives us two powerful tools: supply, demand, and incentives. So, if you hear, "Let the market do its thing," that's classical economics. Imagine the government sets a rent ceiling. Sounds good, but supply shrinks. That's the classical takeaway. Markets send signals. Listen to them, don't jam the gears. Enter Karl Marx. He's not just an angry grouch yelling, "Class struggle," at dinner parties. He's a systematic thinker. Marx asked a simple question: how is the economy divided? Who captures the value produced? Where classical economics focuses on markets and efficiency, Marx focuses on class and power. He looks at the relation between capital owners and workers. Who owns the machines? Who works them? Who gets the pay? Marx's core idea, simplified, is the labor theory of value. Roughly, the value of a product is tied to the labor embedded in it. From this, he builds an accusation: capitalists extract surplus value. You produce more value in a day than you receive as a wage. The rest becomes profit for the owner. That difference is surplus value. It's the source of profits. So, in Marx's view, capitalism is built on an unequal split: workers produce, capitalists appropriate. Marx also predicted crisis. Capitalism, he thought, tends to overproduce, intensify competition, and periodically crash. Why? Because profit seeking leads to technological changes that displace workers. Fewer workers, less consumption, but production stays high. Demand collapses, recessions happen. Why does Marx still matter? Two reasons. He forces us to look at distribution and power. Policies are not neutral. They reflect winners and losers. Two, his critique of alienation. Work under capitalism can be soulless. You perform narrow tasks, repeat the same motion, and feel disconnected from what you produce. That the labor theory of value is a crude tool by modern standards. Economists today prefer subjective value. Value depends on preferences, not only labor. Marx predicted inevitable collapse and revolution. That didn't happen as he expected. Capitalism adapted welfare systems, unions, progressive taxes. The system changed to survive. Nevertheless, Marx's lens, class exploitation and crisis tendencies, remains powerful. Short example: imagine a garment factory. Workers stitch shirts. The company sells shirts worldwide and reaps large profits. Workers get low pay. They struggle. A Marxian analysis would focus on the power imbalance and extraction of value. It asks who set the price, who captured the surplus, and what structures can change that. If you find yourself asking, who benefits, more than, what's efficient, you're thinking like Marx. Time for a fancier label: neoclassical economics. Think of this as the modern version of classical ideas with a psychological twist. Where Marx and classical disagree on sources of value, neoclassical economics says value is subjective. First, the price of something is determined by what buyers are willing to pay, not strictly by how much it costs to make. Water is cheap to produce but essential. Diamonds are expensive though useless in daily survival. Why? People value things differently. Second, marginalism. This is a crucial idea. People decide based on the margin. Not overall totals, but the additional unit. Combine subjective value and marginal thinking, and you get a modern theory of demand and supply. That explains weird real-world observations. With people pay crazy amounts for brand names. Neoclassical economics also formalize choice. Individuals maximize utility. Firms maximize profit. But assumptions matter. Neoclassical models assume rational agents with full information. With behavioral economics later showed many deviations from perfect rationality. Let's tie this to the cupcake shop down the street. If the shop lowers the price by a little, how many more cupcakes will it sell? Where it struggles is similar to previous critiques: distribution and power. Summary: neoclassical economics refined the idea of value and introduced marginal analysis. It gave economists sharper tools, which is both why it's powerful and why it can be cold. Money seems simple. Paper with faces on it. Digital numbers in an app. But money changes how decisions play out. Monetary economics studies the role of money, inflation, interest rates, and central banks. Think of money as the lubricant of the economic machine. Too little and gears grind. Too much and they slip. The question is, how much is too much? Inflation is a central term. It means general price levels are rising. A loaf of bread costs more today than it did last year. But inflation has many causes. One common cause: too much money chasing too few goods. If the central bank increases the money supply rapidly, but production doesn't keep up, prices rise. Another cause: supply shocks. If oil prices spike, transportation costs rise, and many goods cost more. Monetarists, led historically by Milton Friedman, emphasize the money supply. Their mantra: inflation is always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon. Central banks use tools: interest rates, reserve requirements, and open market operations. Lower interest rates make borrowing cheaper. That stimulates spending and investment. Raise rates, and borrowing slows. That cools the economy. Here's an everyday example. Your government decides to print money to cover a budget shortfall. For a time, everything seems fine. People have cash. Shops sell. But if the printing continues and production doesn't ramp up, inflation accelerates. Money loses purchasing power. Wages struggle to keep up. People on fixed income suffer. If people expect inflation, they act differently. Workers demand higher wages. Firms set higher prices. Expectations can become self-fulfilling. There's also the concept of real vs nominal. If nominal wages rise 5%, but inflation is 6%, you're poorer in real terms. Monetary policy isn't a silver bullet. It can't fix every problem. Yet, monetary policy is powerful. It can stop a collapse. It can smooth fluctuations. And when it fails, because of misreads or unintended consequences, the fallout is painful. John Maynard Keynes enters stage left. Picture the 1930s: mass unemployment, factories idle, despair everywhere. Classical mechanics seemed to fail. Markets didn't self-correct fast enough. Keynes asked, what happens when demand collapses? The answer: prolonged unemployment and wasted resources. People want to save. Firms don't invest. Production shrinks. The machine gets stuck. Keynes's key idea: aggregate demand matters. If total spending is too low, the economy will underperform. And no amount of price or wage cuts will necessarily fix it. Because cutting wages reduces people's incomes, making demand fall further. It's a trap. Solution: active government policy. The government should spend. Build roads, fund schools, hire people, inject demand. That spending creates income, which creates demand, which creates jobs. The multiplier effect. Imagine the government hires construction workers to build a bridge. Those workers spend money on food, rent, and clothing. Shopkeepers hire more people. The initial spending multiplies through the economy. Keynesians emphasize fiscal policy, government spending and taxes. In recessions, run deficits to stimulate demand. In booms, run surpluses to cool things down. Waiting for markets to self-correct could mean mass suffering. Active policy is humane. Critics say government spending is wasteful, crowds out private investment and raises debt. But proponents respond in a depressed economy. Crowding out is unlikely. Keynesian economics shaped post-war policy. Governments managed growth and unemployment. The Keynes also spoke about uncertainty and animal spirits, the psychology of investment. When investors are pessimistic, they don't invest even in good times. Confidence matters. In 2008, governments used big fiscal and monetary packages to stop collapse. Countries that acted fast recovered faster. That's Keynesianism in action. But Keynesianism isn't a license for infinite spending. Timing, targeting, and design matter. Poorly designed programs can waste money. Politicians may prefer flashy projects. In short, markets can fail to create enough demand. Governments can and should stabilize them. When the market sleeps, fiscal policy can wake it up. So far, we've met several theories. Each offers different policy advice. Let's compare, quickly and practically. Classical: keep government small. Focus on rules, don't distort prices. Incentives are everything. Marxian: question who benefits. Redistribute if necessary. Protect workers. Regulate private power. Neoclassical: design incentives smartly. Use taxes and subsidies carefully. Price signals are information. Efficiency matters. Keynesian: when demand collapses, spend. Use public works, subsidies, and unemployment insurance to stabilize income. Now taxes. Taxes fund public goods, with roads, education, health. But taxes change behavior. Welfare policy is controversial. Critics say it creates dependency. Supporters say it cushions shocks and maintains demand. Subsidies are similar. Subsidizing green energy encourages adoption, but can also prop up failing industries. Regulation protects consumers and reduces pollution. But too much can stifle innovation. Externalities are key. Pollution's cost isn't in the product's price. Markets don't always provide everything. Public goods, clean air, lighthouses, roads, need public provision. Policy debates are rarely pure theory. They're politics too. Who wins and who loses determines what gets adopted. Good economics informs the debate. It doesn't decide it. All these classical-looking models assume rational agents, but humans are quirky. Behavior is messy. That's the realm of behavioral economics. 2 quick insights. First, people use heuristics, shortcuts. Save time, make mistakes. They follow rules of thumb rather than strict optimization. Example: default options matter. If your workplace auto enrolls employees into retirement savings, participation jumps. Small design changes can have big effects. Second, people discount future benefits too heavily. They procrastinate. Save too little. This affects pensions, health choices, and education. Loss aversion is another big idea. Losses hurt more than gains of the same size feel good. Framing matters. Present a health message as avoiding a loss, and people act more. Behavioral economics suggests policy can nudge. Design choices to help people make better decisions without heavy-handed mandates. But caution: nudges are not substitutes for robust policy when big structural problems exist. With nudging a person to save a little is different from addressing joblessness. Still, behavioral insights make models more realistic. They make policies more humane and effective. And they remind economists that people are human, not calculators. Theory is only useful when it explains something real. Let's run practical examples and see which theory helps us. Example 1: rice prices spike after a flood. Why? Supply shock. Farmers can't plant. Supply falls. Classical analysis: price rises. Farmers invest when they can, and supply recovers. Neoclassical: consumers adjust consumption, maybe they switch to alternatives. Keynesian: only relevant if the shock collapses aggregate demand. Unlikely here. Monetarists: only relevant if money supply expands. Marx: he'd ask who faces the hardship and how owners use power. Maybe poorer consumers bear the burden. Example 20: a garment factory closes in a small town. Workers lose jobs. The town's shops struggle. Classical theory focuses on labor mobility and market adjustments. Over time, workers find new jobs. And Marx focuses on power, who owns capital, who pays unemployment costs. Keynesians push for stimulus, government funds retraining, hires people for public works. Behavioral might note people's attachment to place and the social cost of relocation. Example 3e. A government prints money to pay off debts. Short-term effect, people have more cash. Long-term risk, inflation erodes purchasing power. With monetarists would warn this leads to inflation unless production increases. Keynesians might accept temporary printing if it stimulates investment during a slump, but they'd stress caution. Example 4xi. Rent controls in a city. With classical critique, price ceiling leads to housing shortages and reduced maintenance. Marxian view. Rent controls reflect political pressure from tenants against landlords. Neoclassical suggests better alternatives. Targeted vouchers that help the poor without distorting incentives. Behavioral suggests pointing out default rental contracts and support services for tenants. Example 50. The rise of a tech monopoly. A company grows big by building a better product. Neoclassical monopoly causes loss of consumer surplus and less competition. Marxian. New form of concentrated capital and extraction. Policy responses vary. Classical folks may want to avoid heavy-handed breaks, others call for regulation. This shows how different theories prescribe different fixes for the same problem. Takeaway: the same event can be explained multiple ways. The theory you pick suggests different policies. That's why debates matter. Modern economic policy rarely follows one theory alone. Instead, it mixes insights pragmatically. Why? Because different theories explain different problems. Markets coordinate certain things well. Governments can step in where markets fail. Power shapes outcomes. Human psychology skews behavior. Money influences prices. History shows no single approach is sufficient. Examples of synthesis: use markets for allocation. Regulate for externalities. Provide safety nets for distributional fairness. Apply monetary policy for inflation control and fiscal policy during demand collapses. Use behavioral tools to make policies more effective and humane. It recognized that historical and political context matters. A policy that works in a small, wealthy country might flounder in a large, developing one. Practical policy is like medicine. Diagnose the problem first. Don't administer broad-spectrum antibiotics unless you know what's causing the infection. Tailor the instrument to the problem. Economists have become better diagnosticians. We have models that incorporate uncertainty, information problems, and political economy. That's progress. But tools are limited. Trade-offs are inevitable. So when someone shouts, "free market" or "state control now," ask, what specific problem are we addressing? Are we dealing with a lack of investment, an inequality crisis, an inflationary spiral? Each requires different tools. You don't need to learn equations to reason like an economist. Here are 5 practical rules. Rule 1. Identify incentives. With people, respond to rewards and penalties. Ask who benefits from a policy, who loses. Rule 20. Think about unintended consequences. Good intentions can trigger bad outcomes. Ask what will people do once the rule exists. Rule 30. Distinguish between short-run and long-run effects. Fewer houses hurts later. Rule 4. Consider distribution, not just averages. GDP can grow while many people stagnate. Rule 50. Use evidence. Policy should be judged by outcomes, not only by theory. Apply these heuristics, and your intuition becomes smarter. Classical economics markets coordinate. Price signals matter. Government interference can be costly, if useful for understanding incentives and supply and demand. Marxism focus on class power and distribution. Highlights exploitation, alienation, and crisis tendencies. Sharp tool for inequality analysis. Neoclassical value is subjective, marginal analysis is crucial. Gives formal, predictive tools. Assumes rational agents. Monetarism, money matters. Controlling money supply can control inflation. Keynesian, aggregate demand matters. Governments can and should stabilize the economy during slumps. Behavioral, people aren't perfect calculators. Design policies to work with human psychology. No single theory explains everything. Use a toolbox. Diagnose before prescribing. Policies are political. Fairness matters. Final thought: economics is not just about money. It's about human choices. It's about designing institutions that help societies flourish while minimizing harm. If you learned one useful idea, great. If you learned none, blame me gently and watch again. If you want a one-page cheat sheet, I'll pin it in the comments. If you want a beginner-only version, no names, just stories, type beginner mode. Subscribe for more short, useful guides. I make these so your next dinner party argument won't be embarrassing. Thanks for watching. And remember, sometimes the right economic policy is the one that makes life better for people today, not just neat on paper.